I take utmost pride in introducing you all to our prestigious speaker and guest, Major General Asghar Nawaz, Halal-e-Imtiyaz Military, CEO and Managing Director, Foundation Power Company, Dhaki Limited. General Nawaz is a hardcore military professional with a diverse management experience in corporate, humanitarian and development sectors, both at national and international level. He is a graduate of Military College of Engineering, Risalpur, Command and Staff College, Quetta, and National Defence University, Islamabad, a qualified civil engineer, and he also holds a master's degree in war studies. Major General Asghar has a decorated profile with achievements ranging in plethora of fields both nationally and internationally. He has widely travelled and has represented Pakistan's official delegations in climate-related conferences at Sendai, Japan, Paris, Istanbul and Marrakesh. The General has also remained a faculty of NDU, Secretary of National Disaster Management Commission and Secretary of National Logistics Board. In 2014, he was granted the most honorary medal, the Halal-e-Imtiyaz Military, by the President of Pakistan. At present, he is Managing Director, Foundation Power Company, Dhaki Limited, a subsidiary of Fauji Foundation Group. Without further ado, I would like to invite General Asghar Nawaz to the podium to enlighten us about his experiences and today's topic. Sir?
Faculties, ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud privilege to be here today and talk to you on a subject which is very less known. And as a matter of fact, it's the future that this climate change poses such a challenge for a generation like you, because perhaps we are now transcending, people like me are transcending to a later part of our life, and it is you who have to face these challenges and need a greater visibility about this topic. The Rector Nest, a good old friend of mine, while we were conversating sometimes, asked me that we keep inviting the guest speaker to enlighten our faculty as well as the students on certain new topics. So can you contribute? And I thought it appropriate to give this talk today and give you an insight into the challenges of climate change and disaster management which are faced by the country. Next. My talk will definitely be structured and focused, and I've tried to ensure that I should not be very technical in certain things and should keep you awake, keep your interest alive. And what is a climate change? Because you all must have been hearing, you're all, mashallah, very good students. And what is a climate change in perspective? Please go back. Then I'll go on to certain global frameworks that are most talked about nowadays. How the world wants to, or the international community wants to tackle these challenges. Then coming on to our National Disaster Management System, of which I was a part and I was heading the NDMA. Some insight into Pakistan's disaster context. What have we faced? Where are we residing as far as the disasters are concerned? Certain experiences, and then I'll be in a position to highlight certain challenges and give certain, way forward for that. Next. It's very important to know the definition. Climate change, any change in climate over time, whether due to natural variability or as a result of human activity. This is the definition of an intergovernmental panel for climate change, which has been set up by all the governments of the world community who are actually working on the climate change. So this is the best definition. And then When I'm over with these definitions, I'll give you my own definition. Next. Another definition is that it is a phenomenon that is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity, which alters the composition of global atmosphere, and that is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. It is climate change, as I put it, that like you find it in a vehicle or in a geyser. There is a thermostat which maintains an equilibrium. In an air conditioner also, you put the temperature at 21 degrees, and when that 21 degrees is achieved, automatically it goes back. But if that thermostat is not functioning, so maybe, it will either keep on cooling or keep on heating, and you will not know. So climate change is when your thermostat of this planet and the earth gets disturbed, that nothing is in your control. The winters do not remain the winters that you had been experiencing, and the summers do not remain the summers that you have been experiencing. You start experiencing a snowfall in summer, and you start experiencing extreme heat in winters. That is where certain thermostat changes have occurred. Next. A disaster is a catastrophe or a calamity in an affected area arising from natural or man-made causes or by accidents, which result in a substantial loss of human suffering or damage or destruction or property. When we talk of natural hazards, storm is a natural hazard. If there is a storm which is coming, it is said to come, but if that storm causes a destruction or a loss or a damage, it turns into a disaster. Similarly, a flood is something which is natural calamity, which is bound to occur. But if that flood causes, this hazard causes a damage or a destruction, it becomes a disaster. Next. A disaster, the entire spectrum of disaster management starts from risk assessment. Based on that risk assessment, the preventive measure that you take, awareness and capacity building, that is why I am here today for. Carrying out the preparedness, and then of course when it is set to occur, the early warning. And when a disaster happens, then you first of all try to recover, provide relief. If you rescue the people, then you provide them relief, you recover, you rehabilitate, and then reconstruct. When a flood happens, you must have seen there are boats, they go for the rescue. You start setting up relief camps, giving a relief to the people. Slowly and gradually, they are brought back to the life, and then whatever damage has occurred, you start reconstructing. So it's an entire, spectrum of disaster management. Next. This is a term that some of you in your fields in which you are trying to get the education, you are going to use, and you'll find it in the life cycle of your degree. The disaster risk management, if you put off the disaster, it is risk management. So risk management happens everywhere. It is the comprehensive approach to reduce the adverse impacts of a disaster, that is all actions taken before, during and after the disaster. Let's say wherever we are sitting in this institution, and it is an active zone of earthquake, so we would like to find it out, are there any fragile buildings within this complex that tomorrow when you are attending to your university and an earthquake occurs, it stays there and it does not fall. So it is a risk assessment. It happens for every type of disaster. Next. Then it is the disaster risk reduction. So based on your risk assessment, the measures to minimize those vulnerabilities and disaster risks to avoid or limit the adverse impacts of hazards are known as disaster risk reduction. You will take the measures. There are people who are living in the waterways. There is a Nala Lai here. So you know every year it has a flood. You will have to ensure that its banks are protected. There are no encroachments, that the people come inside it and they are exposed to this. So these measures that you take will count in this context. Next. Resilience is the capacity of a community, society or organization potentially exposed to hazard to adopt by resisting or changing in order to maintain acceptable level of functioning. If in a city like New York, the electricity would go for, let's say, 10 hours, they are so much used to it, they won't be able to survive it. It happens in Pakistan, we are more resilient because we every day experience load shedding. So if the people who are living in a hot area, they go into a cold area, it's very difficult for them to adapt to perhaps those temperature changes. In a city like Karachi, if you have winter set in over there of the scale of like we have here in Rawalpindi, you will find them wearing duffel coats. So it is like very difficult for them to. So it is something which is natural, and I, being my experience, can tell you Pakistanis are a very resilient nation. Alhamdulillah, that is what I've seen in my experience as a chairman of NDMA and ERA. Next. So why climate change is important? It is self-explanatory in what Mr. Macron, the President of France, said. Don't be mistaken on climate. There is no plan B, but there is no plan B because there is no planet B. We have only one planet. So if we are vulnerable to climate change, this climate of this planet is changing, we don't have any other planet to go. It is us who have to take those measures to ensure that we mitigate the effects of this climate change. Next. So how these things are happening? You must have heard about the greenhouse effects. The sunlight comes to the earth. Some part of that sunlight that hits the earth is reflected and rest becomes heat. There are certain gases like carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere. If they exist in the atmosphere, they trap the heat and make the temperature more hot. These gases occur as a result of emissions. Next. And as you can see, the carbon dioxide comes out of the fuel that we use in our vehicles, transport, so many other places. Methane is another gas which comes out of agriculture and livestock. So you have the standing fields, even they are giving certain emissions. Then nitrous oxide, it comes from the fertilizer. PFCs, it comes from industrial processes. HFCs, it comes from refrigeration and ACs. And SF6, it comes from fossil fuels. So these are the sources, and you can see that it is there in almost every part of our everyday life and industry, agriculture. So they are emitting. And when these emissions, in the earlier part of 19th century, the world went for industrialization. And that is how we live as we are living today. The trains, transport, aircrafts, telephone, name a thing, they are a product of industry. And this industrialization, the mass industrialization which occurred, followed by the wars that were there in 19th century and 20th century. So it all contributed towards those emissions of these greenhouse gases that we came on to the Earth's temperature started rising. And what it did to the Earth. Next. This is, as you can see, in September 1984, that Arctic looked like, and it is how it looked like in September 2016. See the shrinkage which has occurred. Next. This is the Columbia Glacier, Columbia Bay, Alaska. This is how it was in 2006 and 2015, and you can see that the loss in terms of measures that have been given, that an annual amount equal to the height of New York's Empire State Building, 381 meters. And it is still happening. Next. There is an intergovernmental panel that I told you, IPCC. Its sixth report has also come, which is under debate, but in 2015, the assessment report, they keep on reading about how climate change is affecting the earth. They said that there will be 0.6 degree rise in average global temperature in 20th century, and increase of 1.8 to 4 degrees projected in 21st century. Globally, extreme increase and decrease in precipitation, that is the rainfall. Increased frequency and intensity of extreme climatic events, cyclones, storms, floods, droughts, heat waves, etc. Mean sea level risen by 0.19 meter and continues to rise. When I told you that the Arctic, melt that I showed you, where this water is going, where the water of flood is going, it's going into the sea. And the sea level is rising. And when the sea level is rising, there would be certain islands in the world which will cease to exist at certain point of time. Increase in ocean acidification and global water cycle affected. Next. आगे चलिए. From 1884, the temperature of Earth was officially, they started recording it. So, like what we hear, and you have all those who have AccuWeather and your mobiles, that what is going to be the temperature today, it started somewhere back in 1884. And in the recordist history, 2016 was the warmest year on record. Just this year, you must have all seen in Europe what was happening, with the heat wave. They have the houses which are not built for air conditioners like us. Their houses are, the rooms are very small. Their air conditioning is not like the one that we have here. They don't even have the fans there. Next. So, just to give you, I talked of natural hazards, that how we look onto these natural hazards. First, it is geophysical. The geophysical hazard, it is other than the climate change. Ek minute hai ji. Go on to geophysical only. So it is like we have the earthquake, the mass movement of the slides that we have. You are all aware of the slide that we had at Atabad. Next. We have glacier lake outburst in our country also, especially in the areas, northern areas where we have these glaciers. Because of extreme temperature, they burst, and when they burst, there is a large, movement of glacier into the hill torrents. It causes flood. Next. Biological, that is the animal accidents, epidemic, insect infection. Some of it we are all facing nowadays in Rawalpindi also. Next. And extraterrestrial hazards, that is effect and space and weather. Out of this, next, hydrological, meteorological and climatological, these three hazards are attributed to climate change. Don't ever mix that an earthquake is also part of climate change. It may not, it's a geophysical hazard. Next. The top 10 countries affected by disaster, and it's 1 decade's data from 2005 to 10. You find Pakistan. These are the number of, this is the losses in millions, and these are the number of events. And you can find almost most of the countries except maybe Mexico or some, they're all in Asia. Next. Next. This is an index which German Watch, an organization, issues every year during the annual conference of climate change. This index indicates the data from 1995 to 2014 we were 8th, and from 1994 to 2013 we were amongst the first 10 countries. So that is to say, so in one of the most 10 vulnerable countries in the world, we have got nothing to do with it that we have done something bad. Actually, our location is in an area that we are exposed to such vulnerability. Next. You see, this red talks of something, the worst affected countries. You can find a red marker here because here where we are located, it is also over here, some part of it is here. So again, this is the region which is again in Asia, in South Asia, Far East Asia, that you are quite exposed to the effects of climate change. Next. These are the climate dominated disasters type. Next. Next. And you find that amongst them, they are 53% related to flood and extreme temperature related issues, and this is the one affecting out of the, so in the world, almost 53% events are happening because of the flood or the temperature related, and we are unfortunately in an area which is flood prone. Next. The effects of climate change in Pakistan. Next. Because of all the pollution that we find, there is a black carbon which is actually accumulating on Pakistani glaciers. These are those glaciers, and blackening of this glacial result because the black bodies, they absorb the heat, the light colors, they reflect the heat. So there is a heat absorption and there is an increase in rate of melting. Next. This is the increased temperature which is projected from 2016 to 2035 by the IPCC report, and it also indicates the temperature trends of last decades. You can find from 1956 onward, our temperature, if there was a global average rise in temperature, it was 0.12, ours was 0.16. And if from 1991 to 2005, it was globally the average temperature of Earth was rising as 0.33 degrees centigrade, we were at 0.74. It's almost twice as fast as the global average. Again, we don't have to do anything with it. It is our location actually on the world that we are vulnerable and exposed to such a happening. Next. Effects. The snow maxima is shifting towards February. When we were young, the winter would start in October. We had 4 seasons. So it would happen that you will have proper springs, you will have summers, you will have autumn, and then you will have winter. But now you see, we are still in November, and I find most of you are not wearing the sweaters, and we are still maybe using air conditioners and fans. So what happens is, if they are late winters, the snow goes on to in February and March, and immediately after that the summers come in and the snow gets start melting, and there is no spring in between. And similarly, with the prolonged summers, you immediately go on to winters, there is no autumn in between. So in our case, almost snow is now shifting late beyond January and February. Next. There is a shift in monsoon rainfall. It is going towards, it is moving towards west. There were areas like Chitral, Gilgit-Baltistan, where we never had monsoons. But you see in 2010 what happened? there is a gradual increase in the rain pattern in those areas, and these areas are actually, they are structured in a manner that they only had to receive the winter rains and the winter snowfall. But you also start having the summer rains in a monsoon. It results in the glaciers melting, glaciers outbreak, and so many other hazards. So additional 25 districts are under now severe threat. Next. Then you can see the comparison in the temperature of Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Both touch the Indian Ocean. The sea level temperature is continuously rising. So what will happen? Two things. One, we will start in a particular time receiving more of these cyclones. There was one which was heading last week. There is another which was building up. So there will be more cyclonic activity or storms, sea water storms in Arabian Sea. And of course, there would be a sea level rise also. So both things for a city like Karachi, I think I'll leave it to your imagination what can happen. Next. Water shortage. I think by now everyone is sensitized to it. 5 years ago, we would not talk of it. Here, there is a comparison given with all other countries. The average annual flow, we have 145. We have 3 dams. This is our storage capacity, which is almost 10%. And see on to the other countries where they have reached. See the number of dams that we find even only in India. They have a 33% storage. Our water, especially after the flood which comes, it gets wasted. And we are otherwise, very open-hearted in wasting water. Next. And these dams, 3 dams that we have, even their storage is decreasing because the rivers bring the silt and their storage capacity is gradually decreasing. We have 30 days storage, which we should have 100, and from 5,300 cubic meters in 1947, we are now less than 1,000 in. So we are a water-starved country. Next. And what happens? We have variable intensity, inconsistent behavior of monsoon. There are melting glaciers, extreme climatic events. Summers are becoming hotter. There are heavy downpours, short rains, high intensity rain in short hours. There are displacements. We have seen what happened in Natabad, a complete locality, the complete residents of those areas, they don't have any identity because their village is submerged. And there are other displacements in drought at Thar, which are because people can't live there. It's no more livable in certain cases. Next. The sectoral impacts in water, there is a variation in river flows. There is a reduced yield of crops. There is reduced availability of water for hydropower generation. Because of high temperature, the thermal power plants, their efficiency gets affected. There are increased losses and there is increase in electricity demand. Next. Human health. There are increase in heat-related mortality. In 2015, I was chairman NDMA. I went to Karachi. In 4 days, there were over 1,200 casualties because of the heat wave. They were not used to it. All the breeze that they used to have, which is traditional, which would keep an equilibrium, the temperature had stopped. 4 days, 1,200 casualties, 300 per day. Higher air and water temperatures fear reproduction of vector diseases and increase infectious diseases, malaria, dengue. There are certain diseases we had never heard of. Vector diseases get promoted. And it's not happening with us, it's happening in various parts. They have, those diseases that they were not attuned to. Next. This is the historical disaster occurrences in Pakistan. Next. And flood remain our most recurrent phenomena in Pakistan. Next. And just to give you cost of flood damage, for up to 60 years, up to almost 2010, we had 19 billion lost because of these flood damages. Next. And from 2010 onwards to almost 2015, we had again 19 billion. So imagine, our population also increased, our exposure also increased, we got more vulnerable, and this is how actually it is affecting us. Next. Certain global frameworks. First is a UN Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. World is alive. United Nations is doing its best to bring the international community, the developed nation, to help the poor and the developing nations, and to ensure that the earth combats the effects of climate change, and it is also reduces the disasters. You all have seen, when a disaster happens in any country, may it be even USA, a country alone cannot combat that disasters. You find the relief coming from all over the world. So world is now thinking that instead that we start providing the relief, we should invest in those measures which can reduce the effect of those disasters. So next, dikha dijiye. It was adopted in 2015 at Japan, signed by 187 nations. Aage dikhaएं. There are 4 priority areas: understanding the risk, strengthening the disaster risk governance, investing in disaster risk reduction, and disaster preparedness to build back better. Next. The second one is a famous UN Paris Climate Change Agreement. The people of this planet finally agreed in December 2015 that we need to collectively, fight the climate change. I was there as part of Pakistan's delegation. It was one success of UN, although implementation is still wanting till to date. But here, next. 196 countries attended the conference, and 174 countries have already signed this agreement. Next. They pledged that they will limit the global average temperature increase to below 2 degrees with the aim for even doing it up to 1.5 degrees. So they pledged that we will control these emissions of these greenhouse gases, and we will take measures so that this temperature does not go beyond this level. Next. And it has all those measures for how to mitigate the effects, how to adapt to the climate change, and how to finance and provide. The technology has a lot of relevance to fighting climate change. Next. And all countries have given their commitment that they will control these emissions. Pakistan has also given a commitment. Of course, in order to reach to that stage, one of the commitment is that I know that this air conditioner, it has emissions. So if I have to change this air conditioner with another air conditioner which does not produce those sort of emissions, it costs money. It costs money from the consumer end, also at the government end. If I am producing electricity from coal today, and I say so, I will produce it from wind or thermal which does not have those emissions, it costs money. And the last one is the UN first humanitarian summit 2010. United Nations was born after the Second World War. So in 2000, that was I think after 1945. In 2010 they had the first humanitarian summit. So here, next. I was again Pakistan's delegation. Next. The world pledged that we will prevent and end conflicts. We will uphold the normal that safeguard humanity. We will leave no one behind. We will work differently to end needs and invest in humanity. Next. In Pakistan, I will be pleased to tell you that we learned from our experiences, and we have a very good structured system in place. Although challenges are there, we are a big country, very big population, less of resources, but we actually moved towards that direction. Next. In 1958, National Calamity Act got. In 1971, there was a very big, flood in former East Pakistan, and after that, we had the emergency relief cell which was established. In 2005, while we had the unprecedented earthquake, Federal Relief Commission in ERA was born. In 2007, there was an NDM Act, and then alongside that, there was raising of National Disaster Management Authority. The Act came in 2010, and in 2015, we merged this ERC in NDMA. Next. So this is how the NDMA looks like. Yeah, there is a Act, then there is a National Disaster Management Commission, which is headed by the Prime Minister, and it has a representation from all the provinces, Gilgit-Baltistan, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Then it is NDMA, and next. So actually, it goes on to policy formulation, and at the provincial level, we have Provincial Disaster Management Commission headed by the Chief Ministers, their Provincial Disaster Management Authorities, which are the enablers. And lastly, this is here that at the district and the local level, community level, that you are the first responder to any disaster. Next. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, anyone and everyone who has got some duty is part of this loop of disaster management, starting from the people to the armed forces, the organizations, the NGOs, UN agencies, government departments. So everyone is part of this loop. Next. So now I give you certain interesting slides. You can see the map of Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, and these are one of the major earthquakes that we experienced. 2015, I was the chairman, then 2005, 6, at different places. Next. This is a fault line map of Pakistan. Don't think that these are the veins in a human body, but it is just like that. Wherever we are sitting and standing at this moment, even a fault line is passing underneath over here also. The fault lines are certain crevices which are there, and they get activated because of the jolts here and there. The recent one that you saw in Mirpur was a one which was dormant for a very long time and got activated because of a jolt. Next. And these all, brown spots actually indicate the earthquake which had been, they all have been, plotted here, and they are according to the scale. This is how we had been experiencing the earthquake at different time. Next. Actually, what is happening that at the almost border of Pakistan and Afghanistan in the Hindu Kush range, there is a Euro-Asian plate and there is an Indian plate. They are both striking like this, and trying to press the other. And when at some point of time they get engaged, they release energy, and then it transfers in form of a shock wave which results into earthquake. So the red indicates the areas which are worst affected, which are most vulnerable to, and there are different color shades that we have given, and you can see in our northern areas, Kashmir, in Balochistan, we have all these areas which are affected. We have already identified the zones which are most affected by vulnerable to earthquake. Next. Next. This is the Pakistan's flood hazard map. These are the floods of 2011, the area they affected. Next. 2012. Next. 2013, 2014, 2015, next. And if we just accumulate them, that which are the areas affected, this is how it comes into this line. Next. And again in the red. So you can see almost center of Pakistan going right up to the coastline. So it's almost multiple provinces which are affected by this. Next. This is the cyclone hazard map. Mostly our, we had 2 cyclone events, 2007 and 10, and it is the coastal areas. Next. It is the drought map, again in our south, in the areas of Thar and Cholistan. Next. Avalanche map, it's mostly in our northern areas and Kashmir. Next. Landslide map, again mostly in the northern areas. Next. Clough, Glacier Lake outburst flooding, again in the northern areas. Next. And tsunami. You will all be surprised to hear that in 1945 or so, there was a tsunami in our Makran coastal belt. And a tsunami has a return period of almost 100 years. So this is again our coastal belt, which is affected to this hazard. Next. Then of course we live in a country, the hydrometeorological hazards, they are just being shown to you in form of pictorial representation. Next. Next. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not exposed only to the natural hazards, but you all know it well, that we are also exposed to man-made hazards. There are a number of them. Apart from the terrorism, you find all of these which can at some point of time affect us. There has just been an accident of the train accident which happened a few days ago. There had been aircraft accidents, oil spills we have been witnessing, fires. So all these, and of course terrorism is again a man-made disaster. Next. Next. This just gives you the experiences of earthquake and the devastation, the disasters and their devastation. It's earthquake 2005. These are the figures about the losses. Next. From 2008 to 15, the earthquake that we had caused these losses. Next. Super floods. There was a loss of $5 billion in 2005 earthquake. It was 10 billions in case of 2010 super floods. Next. 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 The challenges for disaster management, we must remember that we are a developing nation. Our mass is too much, closer to 22 crore of population. You have over 10 million, houses which are kacha, not, pakka. You have lot of your population living in the rural areas and not alive to, there are people who are living in the waterways, in the rivers. They live there. When the flood water comes, they go out, and when the flood water recedes, they come in, because flood with it brings a lot of salt, which is very good for, it's a natural manure or a fertilizer for the agriculture. So they again come. They don't have any other way to live. So they're all exposed. So there are also resource deficiencies. I'll just list them one by one. Next. Our Met department, you commonly joke that they said so there would be rain. There's no rain today, and said they have outdated radars and their capability, although it is being enhanced, but I would still say so. I've seen they're working. They're doing an excellent job with the technology that they have, but they need to be modernized. Next. Our rivers come from India. Some of you must be, if you are following Ravi, Beas, Satluj, Chenab, Jhelum. So we are dependent on them there is a protocol to pass on the information. Unfortunately, that protocol is very fragile. The time frame is required if there is more water coming for as early warning, but sometimes, that mechanism is not very good, and under the present circumstances, even that, whatever mechanism is there, that is also threatened. Next. We have extreme vulnerability against the floods. There is a comprehensive study which was carried out after 2010. It requires, I think, $1.5 billion to take all the measures to actually make the country flood free. The plan is in place. We hope so that with the funding, unless it is done, we will always remain exposed. Next. We have no local government system in place. When 9/11 happened, the first person who came onto the television and started giving the information and started activating the people was the mayor of New York. It is the local government. It is because if something happens to Rawalpindi, it has to be the mayor of Rawalpindi and all those local government representatives and the community were affected, because these local government representatives, they know actually the pulse and the actual information. So we don't have that local government system. So ultimately the results are we have a reliance on armed forces. We don't have civil defense like institutions anymore or they're not very effective. Next. The capacity of disaster management departments is limited in terms of resources and quality of the qualification of human resource. I was chairman in DMA because I'm a general, and of course from Army Corps of Engineers because of my strength and my experience in that area. So I was there, but globally it happens that you need to have the people there who actually are qualified in this. Next. We believe that when a disaster will happen, you ask to talk to the people, they say so that it comes from the God. So after that, they will wait for a relief to come, and it is said so that if you spend $1 in reducing the risk of disaster, you save, $7. Because after the disaster, whatever you have to give as a relief to the people, the cost is very huge. Next. I showed you that we have variety of disasters, we're vulnerable to that, but our mainly thinking is flood oriented, and here and there when earthquake or something like storm, tornadoes, all those things come, we are not prepared. Next. Unfortunately, climate change and disaster risk reduction are not the priority areas in the national government policies, and I say it very loudly. Next. Awareness about climate change and disaster is very limited in the general public, including youth. So all of you who were actually awake and listening to it, so I'm sure even if you can get 10% of this or 5% of this, so you have get it, at least my aim of coming here is done because you get aware about the topic. Next. Way forward. Next. Mr. Ban Ki-moon gave this statement. It is self-explanatory. Disaster risk reduction is the first line of defense against climate change. We invest in reducing the risk of disaster. We have actually, done our job. If we are living in the flood plains, we have to dislocate ourselves, and we will save the cost of human loss or cost of loss to the property and the livelihood that would happen had we been living there and the flood occurred. So this is how you have to start, investing. We start planting the trees. We start planting the trees in the mountainous areas. We will control the slides. We start planting the trees. We will control maybe the effects of temperature and heat waves, and it will affect positively affect even in the monsoon or the rains behavior. So there are investments that you need to do in the reducing the risk of disaster rather than acting after the disaster has acted. Next. The global climate change phenomena presents a real threat which will escalate unless preempted. I'll just give you a short, story. There was a friend of mine from Saudi Arabia, and he was heading a Saudi Arabia Fund for Development. So I was talking to him and showing my concern that, look, this that I've been going around and what I've been seeing and hearing, climate change is a real threat that this globe is facing. And he said, so General, how much long we are going to live? It is for the next generation to think about it. And I think that is also a mindset. So you people have to think about it, that how it is going to transform in a way after 10 years, 15 years past the line. Next. We need to sensitize our youth about climate change and its emerging effects in the coming years. Next. At national level, there has to be a continuous awareness campaign for the general public about climate change and its mitigation and adaptation measures. In 2015, when the heat wave happened at Karachi, and I went there, I faced a very hostile media. They were they start, nothing is being done, how it has happened, and government is not playing its part. So after half an hour and their salvos of questions finished, and they had no more question to ask, so I told them that, look, I want to tell you and give you one message. And that is it is one warning of climate change, and you should be ready to see these events in the coming years. And someone out of them asked, what is the climate change? And I explained to them what all it is. Next year onwards, there was a definite improvement in the response. The media channels by themselves and the people, they started, actually starting those awareness campaign. Even nowadays you see certain ads in the television that in case of heat, what all measures you have to take. Next. Climate change and disaster management has to be taught as a subject from school level. I worked on to it, that to bring changes in the curriculum, to get some of these things. We will, unless we will aware. I was confronted with this question in a climate change commission set up by the government, by the court after the episode of Karachi. And I was asked about 3 things that we should do. So I told them, one, that at school or this level you start, training our youth, awareness, and the third one was that we need to invest in the disaster risk reduction. So I think so, this is what we need to teach people. Next. The government is trying to move towards that direction. The capacities of NDMAs, PDMAs and DDMAs, a lot of work has been done, but a lot has to be done. The local government system has to be strengthened. And we have emergency services like Rescue 1122. In all countries, it is the civil defense which does. In our case, the civil defense, after a particular time just faded away. So Rescue 1122 is something that you always see. They are quite visible and they are efficient. So the efforts are to take it. Punjab is really quite ahead. Other provinces are also following suit. Next. And of course, we need to have a system of volunteers. We have a youth bulge. So the youth has to play its part. Next. We are on active seismic zone. I've showed you that every minute there is an earthquake. Of a very mild intensity to it can turn into a very great intensity. Next. So we need to have a review of building codes. When I was entering this building, I was seeing the structure of this building, and I found that it is in a frame structure, so it's compliant. The maximum destruction and deaths which happened in the earthquake of 2005 was in the schools. Followed by that, it was the hospitals. So you understand how much important these building codes are. Next. And the problem is that you make a law. I was asked a question in a TV program that, sir, all these things happen, what do you do? Why can't we implement these building codes? So I told him it is just like that if you are driving a car in Rawalpindi, and the moment you enter the motorway, you get disciplined, put on a seat belt. So while you are driving here and there, you're doing it rash, you're not disciplined, and over there when you have an implementation mechanism that deters you to not to violate the things. Next. So my concluding remarks are in the form of certain take-homes. This is the guidance from Quran. See that they are tried once or twice every year with different kinds of calamities, disease, famine, etc. Yet they turn not in repentance, nor do they learn a lesson from it. Next. Disasters cannot be prevented and bound to happen, so we need to be prepared. Next. I'll read the one on the left side. We cannot stop natural disaster, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge. So many lives would not have to be lost if there was enough disaster preparedness. That is Petra Nemkova. And again, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. He knew that one day that great storm is going to come. So he built the ark not when the storm came, but before that. So disasters can be reduced through preparedness. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Seminar by gracing our worthy chief guest with special thanks of making us aware of this truly important topic. It was indeed an honor having you and amongst us, and of course having you today. And thank you so very much for everything, and Allah bless you.